Most people believe pressure tests skill. It does not. It tests something far more dangerous: your identity. When performance becomes proof of who you are, a single mistake does not just cost you the moment, it feels like annihilation. And that fracture, the one that destroys most people under pressure, does not begin in ability or preparation. It begins somewhere almost no one thinks to look. Pressure rewrites the rules of reality. When outcome is fused with identity, every moment becomes a referendum on self-worth. The mind is no longer just playing for points or praise, it is fighting for existence. Each success feels like oxygen. Each failure feels like a suffocating collapse. The world shrinks to a single question: if I lose here, what am I? Mistakes become monsters. They don't simply bruise the ego, they threaten to erase the person behind the performance. The body feels it as a surge. The heart pounds, the hands tremble, the vision narrows, while the mind loops on a single silent terror that everything built, trained, and sacrificed will vanish in one exposed flaw. This is not fear of losing, it is fear of unraveling. When self-concept is welded to outcome, the smallest error can feel like annihilation. The brain treats the moment as mortal. The performer is no longer allowed to fail safely. In this place, stakes are not measured in trophies or titles. They are measured in the survival of the self. And so, under pressure, the threat is not just to skill, it is to identity. The next move is not about the game. It is about whether you are allowed to exist after the game is over. Hesitation is the first fracture. The hands pause a beat longer. The eyes dart, uncertain. In that instant, skill that once flowed without thought becomes a thing to be managed. The mind, desperate for control, begins to supervise what should be automatic. Every movement is now under surveillance. The swing of a club, the arc of a bow, the phrasing of a sentence, all of it gets dissected, step by step, as if the performer is both actor and critic at the same time. This shift is not subtle. It feels like watching your own hands from outside your body. The task that once lived in muscle memory is now forced through conscious checkpoints. Every detail demands attention. This is explicit monitoring, a learned action turned self-conscious, clumsy, fragile. The body tenses, the mind splits, performance slows. What should be instinctive becomes a series of questions. Did I do that right? Is this how it's supposed to feel? Then comes the narrowing. Awareness shrinks to a single point: the ball, the incision, the waiting audience. Everything else fades. The world collapses around the threat. Peripheral cues vanish. The mind locks onto what it fears most, starving the rest of the system of information. This is tunnel vision in its purest form. Working memory, already stretched, starts to buckle. The plan, once clear and whole, begins to slip. Steps get lost. Details blur. The performer tries to hold everything together, but the load is too much. Cognitive overload is not a feeling. It's a measurable drop. In experiments, even a mild live timer or a whispered countdown is enough to make skilled people fumble basic routines. Reaction times slow. Errors multiply. The curve that once rose with arousal now plummets. The machinery of collapse is not mysterious. It's visible, trackable, and, under pressure, almost inevitable. Every breakdown starts with a pause. But what follows is a cascade, each layer of control becoming the next point of failure. The mind tries to help. Instead, it unravels everything it built. The stadium is a crucible. Under the floodlights, an elite athlete stands at the edge of an Olympic final. Breath tightens, shoulders draw up. The body knows before the mind admits it. Something is breaking. The routine that once felt effortless now demands conscious control. Every muscle, every fiber, waits for a signal that does not come. The mind, desperate to avoid disaster, begins to monitor itself. Micro tremors ripple through the hands. The eyes fixate, tunnel vision closing out the world. The crowd, once background noise, now becomes a second opponent. Their anticipation is a weight, pressing down on every move. A penalty kick is just a shot until it carries a nation's hope. The moment the whistle blows, private skill turns public. Expectation attaches itself to reputation. The kicker's heart pounds, but the blood vessels do not relax. This is the threat state, not the challenge. Time slows. The pause before the run-up stretches into eternity. The crowd holds its breath. The kicker's mind splits. One part rehearses the shot, the other recoils from the possibility of failure. Confidence in the voice does not mean the body reads the moment as manageable. There is a difference between seeing a challenge and sensing a threat. The line is razor thin. On one side, pressure sharpens. On the other, it suffocates. In this freeze, the world is silent, and the next movement will decide everything. Pressure does not care about the uniform. It finds its way into every high-stakes room, a surgical theater, a concert stage, a boardroom with investors waiting for blood. In the operating room, a surgeon's hands hover above an open artery. Years of training are supposed to take over, but a sudden alarm splits the mind. The sequence of movements, once automatic, now demands conscious oversight. The mind crowds with possible errors. The hands tremble. One misstep can cost a life. The body's own stress chemicals sabotage the very precision they were trained to protect. A conservatory musician steps into the spotlight. The solo begins, but halfway through, the mind blanks. The fingers, which have played these notes 1,000 times, freeze under the gaze of a silent hall. Self-consciousness interrupts the flow. The music vanishes, replaced by a desperate search for what comes next. The audience waits. The pause grows heavier. A founder stands before a wall of faces, slides flickering behind. Every word is a stake in the company's future. As the pitch unfolds, the mind fractures, half on the story, half on the eyes watching for weakness. Sentences break. The voice cracks. Investors exchange glances. The narrative slips away, and with it, the illusion of control. These failures wear different costumes, but the fracture is the same. Pressure does not just break skill, it breaks the machinery that holds skill together: memory, sequence, fluency, timing. The collapse is not personal, it is structural. No domain is immune. Discipline is often mistaken for salvation, but under pressure, its true nature is revealed. Deliberate practice, hours spent refining, repeating, recalibrating, can anchor the mind when chaos closes in. Routines become armor. Patterns take over where thought would only tremble. This is how some protect themselves from collapse, by building systems so strong, so automatic, they can function even as fear claws at the edge of consciousness. Obsession wears a different face. When repetition becomes compulsion, the self begins to shrink around the outcome. The craft is no longer a calling, it is a cage. Every hour of practice is haunted by the need to prove, to defend, to erase doubt. The performer's world narrows to a ledger of wins and losses, each mistake a threat to the fragile order they've built. Obsession promises control, but delivers fragility. The more the identity is welded to result, the more brittle it becomes. Discipline stabilizes only when it serves the craft itself, not the ego's defense. When the answer to pressure is just more routine, more repetition, the risk is that nothing changes except the size of the prison. To survive what pressure reveals, the performer must become more than the sum of their habits. The next step is not about training harder. It is about becoming someone who can withstand the storm when the old routines shatter. Pressure is not a forge that invents weakness. It is a spotlight, unforgiving and precise, revealing what a person's identity rests on. When the self is anchored to outcomes, every contest becomes a battle for existence. But there is another way to survive the storm. The critical change is not in the nerves or the muscles, but in the foundation beneath them. Instead of asking, "Will I win?" the mind learns to ask, "Who am I when I do this?" This shift from outcome-based selfhood to process-based selfhood rewires what pressure can threaten. Role statements and self-affirmation rituals widen the self before the moment arrives. A surgeon whispers, "I am a craftsman." An athlete repeats, "I am a practitioner." These are not empty words. They stretch the boundaries of self, making the task about the craft, not the verdict. Mental toughness is not numbness. It is stability. The core reframe is this: you are not a winner or a loser. You are someone who practices, who returns, who endures. Pressure does not destroy the strong. It exposes what they are built on. A single performer can only hold so much weight, but in the strongest cultures, the burden is distributed. Teams that endure pressure do not measure value by the scoreboard alone. They define worth in the rituals that happen off the field, in the language that survives a loss, in the way a missed shot is met by a circle rather than a spotlight. The coach is not just a tactician, but a guardian of identity. Interventions are never just tweaks to technique. They are acts of recognition. When a player is named the homework doer or the craftsman, it signals that their role is larger than a single outcome. This ritual inoculates against collapse. The group teaches that failure is not exile. The team's story is not written in the final score, but in the way it absorbs the shock of defeat and keeps the self intact. In this culture, pressure cannot erase you. It can only reveal the shape of what the group has built. Right now, the world demands more of us than ever, and the mirror of pressure grows sharper with each expectation. Identity fractures quietly, in boardrooms and bedrooms alike. Survival isn't enough. In the end, pressure doesn't just reveal who breaks. It forces us to decide who we dare to become.